What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And this one is the Game Week 33 preview, and there is a lot to get through. So I'm going to go through the Aston Villa lineup from last night. Is Ollie Watkins dead as an FPL option? Who should you be captaining this week? Should you be using your triple captain? What about bench boost? And a ton of other stuff as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. So let's start with the Aston Villa lineup against PSG last night. The big talking point is that Marcus Rashford once again started as the Aston Villa number 9 and Ollie Watkins was on the bench. If you look at Rashford's recent minutes, he started game week 30 against Brighton. He was rotated in the Forest game in game week 31. But if you remember, so were a lot of Aston Villa players. Not all of them, right? Some of them still played. Morgan Rogers, absolutely indestructible. But a lot of them were rested for the first leg against PSG. Rashford then started that game, and when we all expected rotation in the Southampton game, it didn't happen. Rashford started again, and he was number 9 against PSG last night. I think at this point, we just have to accept that at this moment in time, Marcus Rashford is first choice number 9 for Aston Villa. It's not Ollie Watkins. Can that change? Obviously it can. When will it change? Who knows? Maybe Marcus Rashford's got another 3, 4, 5 games in him before Unai Emery puts Watkins back in. Maybe it'll be the rest of the season. Maybe it'll be the next match. I really don't know. But all the evidence shows us that Rashford is first choice at the moment. Some people keep mentioning the fact that a few weeks ago, Unai Emery said that Ollie Watkins was carrying an injury. But that was weeks ago at this point. There's been no mention since. And I think it's just a case that Rashford's ahead of him in the pecking order. Could they play together with Rashford off the left? Yes. But Unai Emery clearly doesn't want to do that. When you look at the lineup last night, it was Rodgers on the right, Tielemans number 10, and McGinn on the left. Now, obviously, it doesn't work like a traditional, left winger, right? McGinn's not playing like Luis Diaz, for example. But that's the structure that Unai Emery sets up with. Even when he made the changes, Tielemans dropped deeper, Onana went off, Asensio played 10, and when Ramsey came on, it was to play on the left instead of McGinn. So even when Unai Emery could have put Watkins number 9 and Rashford to the left, he didn't do that. He clearly sees him as a number 9 in this system. And he's mentioned playing them together as 2 forwards, like 2 strikers. But he's also said there isn't enough time to practice that. He also kept saying that when Duran was at the club, and it basically never happened. So at the moment, everything points to Rashford and Watkins competing for the number 9 spot, and Rashford is first choice. I think it's very difficult to justify buying Watkins right now. And if you want to go for Rashford as a punt, who's also first choice penalty taker, then that looks a pretty good option for me. The only thing I can say to set your expectations is don't be shocked if at some point Watkins starts instead. Because I don't think any of us think that he's going to remain on the bench for the rest of the season. If you want to go for the minutes, it's Rodgers. If you want to take a real punt, it's probably Tielemans. But personally, I prefer Rodgers instead because Tielemans can often play a bit deeper. And in defence, Konza and Pau Torres are probably your ones that are going to start pretty much every game. If you want to go for absolute security of minutes, just buy Konza. Cash should start most games at right back. Luka Dean should start most games at left back. But they're not as nailed on as Konza. So Rashford's your punt. Rodgers for minutes. Konza for minutes in defence or Martinez. And for those people looking at Asensio, that's both games against PSG he didn't start. Possibly because he's on loan from them. He can get minutes, but maybe he just didn't want to play him from the start. I don't know. But Asensio's minutes have not been fully there since he came into the club, so I would ignore him. It's Rodgers for minutes, Rashford if you want to take a punt. He seems to be first choice right now. How long will it last? I don't know. So let's talk about captaincy for game week 33. Generally, in a double game week, I will do everything I can to not have to captain a single game week player, and that's not really any different in game week 33. I've included Salah on the list just because he's playing Leicester away. I think if it was any other fixture other than Leicester, Ipswich or Southampton, I would discount him from the conversation immediately. But because it is Leicester, I completely understand why people might want to look at him. He's fully capable of outscoring double game week players. We know he's going to start. His minutes will be great. And Leicester have been poor all season. And sometimes at this stage of the season, the narrative starts coming out that they're fighting against relegation. Maybe that will improve performances. Ultimately, they're in the relegation spots because of how bad they are. And they're not going to get out of those relegation spots. So if you want to go for Salah, fair enough. But this might be the last double game week we have all season. I'm definitely going for a double game week player. I think the best option is probably Marmoush. When you consider all the attackers for game week 33 that have got a double, I think he might be the standout. because Arsenal have probably got a better set of fixtures, Ipswich away and Palace at home. But I think people are slightly concerned about Saka's minutes, understandably so. No one really wants to captain Odegaard, I don't think. Merino maybe as a number 9. But what if Arsenal rotate in one of these matches and Merino starts but he's a bit deeper? And they go with a front 3 like Nwaneri, Trossard and Sterling, or Nwaneri, Trossard and Martinelli, something like that. Then all of a sudden I wouldn't want to have my captain's armband on Merino. So Arsenal players are a little bit tricky because of possible rotation. And just generally, I don't think many people own like an Odegaard or a Trossard at this point. Then you look at Man City. Everton away, Villa at home, not as good as Ipswich away and Palace at home, but it's still pretty good. De Bruyne could be an option, but again, there's slight concerns about minutes. Marmoush is probably going to start both of those games and get 80 plus in each of them. Like, even if you look at Crystal Palace players, right, there could be rotation in the game against Arsenal. Even if then there's not, that's a really difficult game. And then you look at Aston Villa, you could take a punt on Rashford, don't mind it, possibly Rodgers, but neither of them on paper are better than Marmoush. So I actually think right now he's probably the standout option. With Saka, if he was going to start both games, I think he's better than Marmoush. But there are those slight doubts there. I think for me to be confident to captain Saka, I probably need to see him come off very early against Real Madrid tonight. So let's say Arsenal are 3-0 up already on aggregate from the first leg. If they score 2 early goals and they're 5-0 up, and Saka comes off on like the 55th minute, then maybe I'd be more confident in his minutes. I just don't see that happening. I don't think Arteta will take it for granted unless they're like 7 or 8-0 up on aggregate. Look what happened last night. PSG scored 2, Villa end up scoring 3. It's very close towards the end. Barcelona with a 4-0 lead, Dortmund scored 3. So I don't think Arteta will take it for granted. I think Saka will be on the pitch for 70 to 80 minutes. And then I'm going to have ever so slight doubts about whether he's going to start Ipswich. I think Saka definitely gets 1 start in the double. I just don't know if I'm confident enough in 2. And so for that reason, I'm almost defaulting to Marmoush because every other attacker feels like a slight minutes risk, or they just don't have as good fixtures. Like Morgan Rodgers will probably start both and could even play 180 minutes. But I think Everton away and Villa at home is just better. So if you want to go for an Arsenal player, I completely understand that. I really don't want to talk people out of doing it. But I think if you're going for safety of minutes and pretty good fixtures, it's probably Marmoush. Does he have penalties? We don't know. It could be De Bruyne. It could be Gundogan. We're just not sure at this point. But even without those penalties, I still back him to do pretty well. His numbers are looking quite good. Haaland's not in the team at the moment. We know that. So yeah, it probably is him. I wonder if I'm just missing. I just think Eze, Sarr, Mateta just don't have a good enough fixture or fixtures in the double. De Bruyne maybe. If you're really confident that De Bruyne is going to start both games, he's very competitive. But I don't know where that confidence would come from. He has started the last 2 games, to be fair, and played close to 90 minutes in both. Is that going to happen when you've got a shorter turnaround? I really don't think so. So for me, it's probably Marmoush. Salah if you want to go single game weeker. Saka if you want to take a risk on the minutes. So I've got a follow-up question. Should I play triple captain in game week 33 or leave it until later on in the season? So the question always is, if you're saving it, what are you saving it for? So in terms of guaranteed double game weeks, 33 is the last one we have this season. There could be doubles in 36. That would rely on teams getting through to the FA Cup final, their match being postponed in game week 37 and getting brought forward to 36. Can that happen? Yes. Is it guaranteed? No. So if you don't use your triple captain this week because you want to save it for a future double, there is a slight risk that there won't be any more double game weeks. This is the potential options that you would have in 36, but keep in mind not all of these things can happen. So for example, if Nottingham Forest beat Man City in the FA Cup semi-final, then Chris Wood could double potentially against Leicester at home and West Ham away, but that would mean that Man City wouldn't double. So if you're looking at that list of fixtures I've got there, which I'll go through in a second, thinking, well, Marmoush against Southampton away, Bournemouth at home sounds great. If Forest beat City, that won't happen. So you even run a risk that they might not happen anyway, and then the one you want to happen doesn't happen. That makes sense. So the potential options you've got are Aston Villa against Bournemouth away and Spurs at home. I've put Ollie Watkins there. At the moment, you wouldn't triple captain him. It'd have to be like Rodgers or Rashford instead. Spurs versus Palace at home, Villa away. So possibly someone like Son. But again, if Spurs are still in Europe, he's probably not going to be completely nailed. Mateta versus Spurs away, Wolves at home. Cunha versus Brighton at home, Palace away. Marmoush versus Southampton away, Bournemouth at home. Evan Nielsen versus Villa at home, Man City away. Bowen versus Man United away, Forest at home. And then Chris Wood versus Leicester at home, West Ham away. They're your teams and players that potentially you could have. The only fixture there that I think is potentially better than what you've got in 33 is Leicester at home, West Ham away. I'm not convinced that Chris Wood is a better captain than what Marmoush is this week. And Marmoush getting to play Southampton potentially as part of a double is great as long as that double happens and as long as Haaland isn't back early. So for me, I look at that. I don't think there's any standout options in 36 that are massively better than what Marmoush and Saka are offering you this week. So for that reason, I wouldn't save my triple captain, just in case they don't happen. And even if they do, I'm not sure they're that much better. The big thing for 36 is it'll be a huge differential, because by the time you get there, most people will have used their triple captain. I don't think that's enough to avoid using it now, personally. Or you could use it in a single game week. So Salah versus Spurs in game week 34 at home. But remember, a lot of people are free hitting that week. You can't use both chips. Isak versus Ipswich at home in game week 34 as well. Marmoush obviously will just have that game against Southampton no matter what. So it could be part of a double. If it's not, it's just a single game week fixture. But again, is Marmoush versus Southampton away better than Marmoush versus Everton away and Villa at home? I'm not sure it is. And also, if you're going to use it on a single game week, why not just use it on Salah versus Leicester this week? It doesn't make much sense to me to save it, because by that point, he could be injured. Haaland might not be back. He might be back. There might be minutes issues. We just don't know. Or Salah versus Crystal Palace last day of the season. But again, is Salah versus Crystal Palace at home better than Salah versus Leicester away? I don't think so. So long story short, I'm pretty sure I'd be using my triple captain this week, unless there's someone on that list that you think is much better. But even in that case, you are running the risk that they don't double, because only 4 teams could double in 36. I think that's how it would work, because you'd have 2 teams that get through to the final, so they would blank, plus their opponents, which would only be another 2 teams. So hopefully that's helped. So should I bench boost now, even if my bench doesn't have any double game week players? This is the point I was trying to make last week, that even though there was a double in 33, only 4 teams are doubling. Therefore, you can only have a maximum of 12 double game week players. Therefore, at least 3 of your players are going to be single game weekers. So it's okay to bench boost with single game week players. Even if there are doubles in game week 36, again, it's likely to only be 4 teams maximum doubling, therefore 12 maximum double game week players, so at least 3 of your players will be single game weekers. And to be honest, even if there are doubles in 36, for most of us that don't have a free hit left at that point, you're not going to have 12 double game week players in game week 36. So your bench, once again, will be single game weekers. So don't panic about using it in a double or not, because you're mostly going to have single game week players on your bench boost. So then the question is, will you have a better bench in a future week? If not, just use it now. Like, people are so concerned about saving chips, and I get it, right, because there's possible opportunities later on. We're in game week 33. There's only so many weeks left of the season. If your bench looks great this week, like you've got an Areola, Connor Bradley, Isak and someone else, or something similar to that, you're probably not likely to have a better bench later on. Like, you can use something like the My Team tool on Fantasy Football Hub. As always, links in the description below. 7-day free trial, 30% off. Loads of other tools over there as well, not just this. But you can see what your bench looks like this week. So for me, before transfers, it would be Martinez, Livramento, Murphy, Nico Williams. And I can just go forward. Game week 34, I'm using my free hit, so I can't use bench boost that week anyway. I've used mine, by the way. I'm just showing you this as an example. And then you can just go through and plot what your bench would be in different weeks based on the transfers that you would make later on. The chances are most of you are not going to have a much better bench later on than you've got this week. So just get it used. And stop worrying about using it in another double game week, because your bench will probably be mostly single game week players. So for anyone looking for a new assistant manager this week, Rob T FPL is once again putting out great graphics on Twitter. Make sure you're following him if you're not already. These are basically the points projections for the 4 managers with double game weeks this week based on bookmakers odds. As you can see, Arteta is in the lead with 15 points. Not a surprise, because it's Ipswich away, Palace at home. Arsenal will be favourites for both games. Clean sheet potential, plenty of goals as well. So if I was moving manager, let's say you went Eddie Howe the last 2 game weeks, Arteta is absolutely where I would go. Because if you're looking at any of the other managers, the only one with a table bonus game is Glasner against Arsenal away. And that's a really tricky match. And the other match is Bournemouth at home. That's not easy either. So I don't really like Glasner. If you're on Glasner already and you would have to, I don't know, sell an Arsenal player to get Arteta, then maybe I wouldn't do it. Maybe I would just stick to Glasner. But if you're on a different manager to these four and you can move to any of them, I think it has to be Arteta. Because Aston Villa, Newcastle at home, Man City away, neither a table bonus. And they're both more difficult games than what Arsenal have. And then Man City have got Everton away, Villa at home. That's not bad, right? I could see Man City winning both of those games, but I wouldn't be as confident as I would be with Arsenal. So as much as there's not a huge amount of table bonus on offer for the double game week managers, you absolutely take the extra fixture. And if you've got the spare Arsenal slot, I would definitely go for Arteta. So let's answer some more of your questions. Who are the best single game week defenders on Bench Boost 33? Realistically, I think there's only two options that most people are going to look at. A Liverpool defender against Leicester away. And I think most people will go for Conor Bradley because he's less than 5 million. If you've got the money to go to Konate or Van Dijk, their minutes are probably better for the rest of the season. Because for Bradley to keep starting, it relies on Trent being injured, and we're not quite sure how long he'll be out for. But in the short term, Conor Bradley looks great. He's very attacking down that right side. Liverpool, great defence. Leicester away, a brilliant fixture. He's probably the number one choice. Or you could go for someone like Aaron Wan-Bissaka against Southampton at home. Better fixture on paper because it's at home, but obviously much worse defence. And Aaron Wan-Bissaka is not as attacking as Conor Bradley is. The one benefit to potentially going for Wan-Bissaka over Conor Bradley is longer term. You've probably got slightly better fixtures for West Ham. And obviously Wan-Bissaka is absolutely nailed. There's no worry about another defender coming back like there is for Trent and Liverpool. And West Ham have got Ipswich away last day of the season, Forest at home in 37. They're not terrible fixtures. But with Liverpool, you've got Spurs at home, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, Brighton away. And even last game of the season, Palace at home is not super easy. So I think in terms of short, like this week, I would definitely go for Bradley over Wan-Bissaka. Maybe if you needed Wan-Bissaka on the last day of the season, you could look at him. But I'd go Liverpool this week if you can. The only other options I could even see realistically with no double is like a Man United defender against Wolves at home. But I think one, most people don't want a Man United defender. And two, you probably don't want them long term. And then a Spurs defender against Forest at home. But Spurs defence is terrible. And also you don't know what the rotation is going to be like. Like, will Pedro Porro definitely play? I can't guarantee you that. It could be Jed Spence and Udogie. It could be Porro and Udogie. It could be Porro and Spence. Like, you're just not quite sure. So I just probably wouldn't go there. I think Conor Bradley's the obvious one that everyone's going to go for. And I think it makes a lot of sense. If it's not him, then probably Wan-Bissaka instead. So would you buy Saka for double game week 33, knowing he's very likely to be sold again in game week 35, probably for Mbeumo? Or would you just get Mbeumo now? So I'm in this exact same dilemma. I'm assuming this person is also on free hit 34. The reason you might want to sell Saka in 35 is because it's in between the two legs of the semi-final of the Champions League. So if Arsenal get through against Real Madrid tonight, which is obviously looking quite likely, they'll have first leg semi-final, Bournemouth at home in 35, second leg semi-final. So it's quite likely to be rotation against Bournemouth. And then in 36, it's Liverpool away. So it's a difficult fixture. So that's the reason why Saka might get sold later on. There are obviously scenarios where you get to game week 35, you've got other stuff to deal with, so you just keep Saka, and that's also fine. But if you've got the spare transfer, I think some people might consider moving him on, and it'll probably be for Mbeumo, or at least he'll be high up the list of options. Because he's got Man United at home in 35, Ipswich away in 36, Fulham at home in 37, Wolves away in 38. You might get to 35, and double game weeks have been scheduled for 36. That might change your transfer plans. And Mbeumo won't double, but even in that case, you've still got Ipswich away as a single game week. So he will be a popular transfer 35. And in 33, instead of the double that Arsenal have got, Brentford have got Brighton at home. So it's not an amazing fixture, but it's not terrible. Mbeumo's capable of getting double digits in that fixture. For me, to go Mbeumo now and save a transfer later on, I would have to be so confident that Saka is not going to start twice in the double. And I'm not that confident. If I'm putting my own money on it, I'm saying one start, one benching. But what if he starts twice? What if he gets 60 minutes against Ipswich, 60 minutes against Palace? That's enough for me to go Saka over Mbeumo. I think for the last double game week, potentially of the season, I just wouldn't forgive myself for bringing in a single game weeker with Brighton at home. And it's not to say Mbeumo is a bad option, because he's not. But how could I live with myself bringing in Mbeumo instead of Saka with Ipswich away and Palace at home? It just doesn't make enough sense to me. If Saka comes off the Real Madrid game with a knock or something, and he's a doubt going into 33, different conversation. But in that case, I'd probably just go for a different Arsenal player. I just don't see me picking Mbeumo. I'm willing to risk that I'll have the transfer later on to deal with this. because of how good that double could be. But I don't like if you really wanted to put Mbeumo in, I wouldn't strongly argue against that. I think it's perfectly reasonable because you're saving a transfer later on, and that's obviously worth some points as well. And I think a lot of people will be looking to get Mbeumo later on. So I don't mind it. Will I be doing it? Like buying Mbeumo, that is? Absolutely not. I'll definitely be going for Saka if he's fit. So who's the third best Man City player? So presumably most of us are agreed that Vardiol and Marmoush are the best two, so it's about adding someone else. I think in terms of goalkeepers, Ederson went off with an injury in the last game week, so we need to wait for an update on him. There was rumours coming out last night that he could be out for a couple of weeks. The problem there is Ortega becomes an option, but he's not particularly cheap, and it doesn't necessarily mean that he will play for the rest of the season, because if Ederson gets back fit, he could take that number one shirt back. So I think at this point, unless Ederson is ruled out for the season, you've probably got to ignore the goalkeepers. If you want to add a second defender, I think it's probably got to be Ruben Dias. I don't think any other defender is as nailed as he is. If they get other defenders back, then that might mean that Ruben Dias misses out at some point. But right now, he is the second most nailed defender behind Vardiol. Like Rico Lewis at 4.3 started the last game, but he was benched the two before that. I just don't think you can risk it. Nico O'Reilly, who's playing left back a lot at the moment, he is listed as a midfielder, so you can't buy him. And Kushinov hasn't played the last 3 game weeks. I think I saw something that he got married recently, so potentially that's why he was given some time off. But I'm not convinced that he comes back in ahead of Diaz, and he's certainly not nailed. So if you want to go a second defender, I think it has to be Ruben Dias. Otherwise, you're looking at an attacker. Again, rumours last night that Foden's injury is not that bad. He could be back in the squad for game week 33. I don't think I would risk buying him at this point. You either go De Bruyne as your more expensive option, or Savinho, but Savinho hasn't started the last 2. And the problem is we're not completely sure how Pep will set up in the next couple of games. Like he benched Doku, Grealish, Savinho, didn't have Foden last game. It was a bit more of a narrower setup. Against a team like Everton away where he's trying to break them down, potentially he'll use wider players. Maybe he'll put Doku and Savinho in that team, but I can't guarantee it. The reason that I've got Savinho on the list is because he's just cheap. So at least if you're taking a punt on the minutes, you're taking it with someone that's not going to use a huge amount of your budget. I guess based on what happened in 32, De Bruyne looks like a good option, but I really feel like I've got to set people's expectations. I don't think it's that likely he starts all matches. And I know what a lot of FPL managers are like. As soon as he gets benched, that'll cause a lot of frustration. The questions will be in, should I sell him? If you're that FPL manager that cannot cope with a player getting benched, just don't buy a third Man City player. Honestly, you don't have to have one. I know they're capable of doing lots of points, and the double is quite good, but there's plenty of game weeks afterwards. And yes, Man City's fixtures, longer term, are pretty decent, right? So they've got Wolves at home, Southampton away, Bournemouth at home, Fulham away, last 4 matches of the season. There's plenty of other players that can get points as well that are way more nailed on. So I'm not trying to talk people out of going for a third City player. I quite like Ruben Dias. I quite like De Bruyne if you've got the money, but they're not essential to have. And it won't feel as essential once you're past game week 33, because there'll be a lot of other options you can consider as well. So right now, Dias, De Bruyne or Savinho, probably the only 3 that I would look at. And obviously, buying a player that's just been benched twice in a row is never going to feel great. So I suspect most people won't want to do that. Let me know if you're buying a third Man City player in the comments below. If you've enjoyed that video and found it useful, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below as well. And I will catch you again tomorrow.